Please join me in giving a warm welcome to writer, director and producer Tom Ford. His editor Joan Sobel and composer Abel Korenioski. Congratulations, Tom, on an absolutely exquisite film, and a film of not only impeccable beauty but tremendous heart. You know, it's impossible not to be moved by the vision that you've brought forth.
Thank you. Thank you. I had wonderful helpers.
Well, before we get into some specifics of collaboration, I'd love to know, and this is probably a tired question for you, but I'm very curious, the genesis of this, and sort of the genesis of your desire to transition from the one art form that you've been working in so successfully into filmmaking.
Art form, you see, that's the key word. Fashion for me, and there are fashion designers who consider themselves artists, fashion for me has never been art. It's a commercial art. It's artistic, but the way that I perform as a fashion designer is to make something that is to be sold. This, the film, was for me the first really pure expression, and in that way the most artistic thing that I've ever done. So they satisfy two very, very different creative outlets. You know, as a fashion designer, what you do lasts, you know, it doesn't last is really the point. I mean, its lifespan is so short. You know, you create something beautiful and something new, because really good fashion has to have a certain elements of newness, of shape and proportion. A woman walks into a room and you gasp. A couple months later, the same woman comes into the room, the same thing. She looks good. 6 months later, she's still wearing that. A year later, it goes to the back of her closet. 30 years later, you see this thing in a museum and you think, wow, the cut's really interesting, the stitching is interesting. He was ahead of his time, that's great. But it never moves you in the way that it did that very first time you saw it. And film is forever. You know, you put in any old movie from the 30s, the 20s, whatever, you know, you may say, oh, this is a scratched print, and then immediately you're sucked in and you're living and breathing with these people and you're laughing and crying with them. I mean, I think if you're someone who likes to design things, it's the closest you get on this planet to being God. You create an alternate universe, and I found it the most satisfying thing I've ever done. So that was my desire to move into film. Is that long-winded? I'm sorry. But when you ask a question like that, it's, you know, it's hard. So I'll try to give you bullet points.
And had you been developing multiple things at the same time, or had you, I read that you reread the Ishwood novel, did you then go, this is it, this is the one for me?
Well, I knew I'd wanted to make a film for a long time, and when I left Gucci in 2004, I thought, okay, this is the moment, this is the chance to do it. And the first thing was to figure out what I wanted to say, because as a fashion designer, I knew what I stood for, but as a filmmaker, why does anyone need to see a Tom Ford movie? Why does anyone need to sit, you know, and watch another film? What do I have to say? What's my voice going to be? And I read all the scripts that were circulating around town. I optioned a couple of books. I started working on things. None of them really spoke to me. And I was driving to my office one day, and I started thinking about George. And I realized, you know, I've been thinking about this character for the last 25 years. In fact, in my life, he's sort of this real person. And I went and picked up the book, A Single Man, which I had read when I was 20 and living and working as a television commercial actor in West Hollywood. At that time, I loved the book, but it was really the character of George. And it's a beautiful character study, and that's what spoke to me. Picking it up in my mid-40s, what spoke to me is the story of a man who can't see his future. The first line of the book is waking up. It begins with saying am and now, which is also the first line of the film. And it's really a story of living in the present and trying to be present. And that really spoke to me going through what I was going through in my life. So I'm sorry it was another long-winded answer. We should talk to these two people.
Just before we get into how you translated your vision and collaborated with, and we have here an editor and composer, but I'm also interested, I hear that it came together very quickly, and you had a very abbreviated pre-production and in astonishingly short production period.
Because we had no money.
Had you gone after distribution from distributor? It was always your vision to make this independently on your own?
Yeah. I've had complete creative freedom for the last 20 years of my life, and I just don't know that I could work in any other way. But it took 3 years to develop this project, to cast it, and to get it made. And so it wasn't, at the very end, when it all came together, it did come together, just really quickly. But, and we had a very limited time for pre-production, but that was really due to budget. And we had 21-day shooting schedule. So, and again, that was due to budget. And so it was tight, and it did come together very quickly, but I'd been working on pulling it together for 3 years, which I know is short in the movie world, but it still took a lot of time and energy.